probably get through it, but I may have to call upon you to read something. Yeah. Thank you very much. Welcome to Thursday, December the 19th, 6 days before Christmas, to our council chambers. Acknowledge that we're holding this on the traditional lands of the Klamath Nation. I'd like to start with announcements, and we'll start with Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. For once, I kind of forgot about announcements. So I'll just take the opportunity to wish the community a wonderful Christmas season and best wishes for the new year.
Thank you. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pretty much the same. I'm off to visit family, so I haven't been paying attention much to the events happening in community. Thanks.
Councillor Southcott.
That makes three of us.
All right. Councillor Doak.
I just want to remind everybody and myself that Christmas is coming, and I've got a list recording who's naughty and nice. And, be careful. Christmas is only 7 days away.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to make sure the community remembers and knows that our annual Christmas tree mulch, if you have fresh trees to mulch, is on January 5th outside Mother Nature's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. The event is organized by the local chapter of our Special Olympics, and they've been doing so for the last 15 years, and the proceeds go to help our local athletes train for the Special Olympics. And so I myself use the mulch and wanted to make sure people put it in their calendar, and remember, you got to get your tree down and over there on that day.
Councillor Paul.
Chair, I'll save seasonal comments till the end tonight, Mayor. Thank you very much.
All right. My only announcement is that I saw my optometrist and they put eye drops in, which I think they probably put 3 times as many as possible. So if I look like I'm groping around here to read the screen, Councillor Southcott has said that he'll step in and help me out. So let's move to the adoption of the agenda.
Move for adoption.
Seconded. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Adoption of the minutes. We have the 3.1 minutes of the special council meeting held December 10th. Councillor Almeida.
Try all three. We'll move the minutes of the special council meeting held December 10th, 2024, the regular council meeting held December 5th, 2024, and the special council meeting held December 3rd, 2024 be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Elliott. Any discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. We'll now move to correspondence. There was just one letter from the Cathette board chair. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. The regional board deliberated fairly long and hard about this matter. What they're asking of our city council is, given that the 2.5 million needs to get paid to finish the Resource Recovery Center project, that they were offering an avenue to pay that out of the whatever that fund's called, the Community Works Fund, and since the Community Works Fund at the regional district is based on the population of the areas A, B, C, D, and E, and the city receives their Community Works funds directly, they have proposed that a split that is based on the area populations, and the alternative would be borrowing the 2.5 million, which would create taxation for the city to pay off the exact same amount as what's in here. So our percentage of what that would be borne by city taxpayers equals what the split between this ask is for. So they're asking the city to put 1.298535 of our Community Works Fund toward this rather than having them borrow and have to recoup that from taxpayers in the budget. And so currently in the draft, this is how they have it. And should we say no or not agree to send Community Works Fund for our share, they would then put that to borrowing instead of using the Community Works funds. That's the proposal. And so I think maybe we could ask councils whether they want to consider this at some point, and if so, I don't know when we would do that, but.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd be interested in getting a report from staff to understand the financial implications of the request, and so I can't do that math myself just on this letter alone. And so I move that we refer this letter to staff for a report to council at an upcoming committee of the whole, so that we can have a fulsome discussion on this topic.
I'll second that.
Good. Any further discussion? All in, oh, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question for our CFO, because there was a request earlier this year from the RD, I believe, regarding the RRC. And the CFO had done a bit of a report on, I believe this request is slightly different in nature in terms of the specificity of it. And I'm just wondering, I guess, is an extra report necessary, or has the report that you've already done kind of cover some of the answers that maybe don't need a report at this point? I don't know if you can enlighten us on that.
Through the chair, a report has been done relating to a previous request, which was for a smaller amount, and it was relating to the Growing Communities Fund Reserve. So from a very high level, you'll have the same answer. If I do a report, this will cost our city taxpayers more. So that will be the same response, but the numbers will be different. So, and the fund that it's accessing would be different. So by all means, staff could bring back a report specific to this request, but I will advise for those who are curious, or if council wants to do some pre-reading, the report from, I believe it was August in the prior year, it will be the same conclusion. The request is for approximately a $700,000 higher increase from the city than would otherwise be asked for. And staff would be happy to do a report on that and bring forward the updated numbers, but I appreciate the question.
Yes, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I just had a question. I recall from the previous report that some of the subtleties were slightly different. I recall it saying that borrowing 100% at the city borrowing money at the city means we have a higher burden of paying 100% of that back, versus borrowing money at the regional district. We then only pay our fair share spread out with the other areas, and we have a larger area to do that with. What was different about this is it's borrowing 2.5 million and our fair share so I would appreciate knowing if you took consideration of all the alternatives with the perspective of the taxpayer paying both sides of that fence.
Through the chair, it is a complicated funding request. On the one hand, from a very high level, one would think this is the city's fair share. It's 52% of 2.5 million. However, the $1.2 million community works fund, that the city has, that is the city's as an area. And so the city's most favorable option would be for the QRD to offer up the 1.2 of community works to which the city is entitled to as an electoral area, and then have the remaining 1.3 be then divided amongst the areas in which the city is one. And so in the most favorable and possible scenario is that the motion would be that community works funding is used. The city is entitled to it, as are the other areas. And then the remaining balance is allocated out. So it would be 52% of the 1.3 million is the base scenario if that were the motion to be made. So it's not, this letter isn't the city's necessarily fair share in that way when you kind of put it on, when you consider the fact that the Growing Community Fund at the QRD is 52%, I suppose, or the city would be entitled for it to be used towards services that the city participates in.
Thank you. Councillor Doughty.
Yeah, I think I want
Yeah, I was on the board still when they were talking about this. And it's a really simple concept. There's $2.5 million cost of the Resource Recovery Center, and that will either be collected from this proposal, which is a suggestion that each local government use some community works fund money, or it will be recovered by taxes. And that means that people in the cities will see an increase in taxes on their statement from the regional district. I think it's worth getting a report from the city and explaining the various things. I understand completely that there's only one taxpayer. The money only comes from taxes, and it only comes from upper governments giving us grants. There's an opportunity for council to make a decision on this, and I think having an informed decision is better than trying to do one with partial information. So I don't see a problem with having a report that explains it thoroughly, then council can debate it and decide what to do. But it is an opportunity to avoid $2.5 million of extra taxation in the region.
We have a motion. Any further discussion? Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. Back to the CFO. I think if I'm understanding you correctly, then what you're basically trying to explain to us is that the 1.2 million that the QRD is proposing the electoral areas cover, technically some of that funding is received by the QRD because of the population of the city of Powell River. So if we were to agree to this, about 52% of that 1.2 million was kind of technically the city's money. So the city's almost paying 1.8, 1.8 roughly. So I'm in favor of the report, and I'm wondering then, A, if I'm accurate in your analysis, and B, in your report, are you able to provide a maybe an appropriate funding breakdown that would be equitable for all?
Through the chair, that's noted. Thank you. Yes, and that was your correct assumptions, and that could be included in the report should council wish.
Councillor Isaac.
Thank you. Just wanted to reference something that I've heard in discussions at the regional district, in that because regional districts and cities both get community works funds, there is either a practice or perception that community works funding in a regional district is intended to go to electoral areas and not to the municipalities within them. And so there may be different interpretations on what is fair share.
We have a motion. Councillor Elliott, do you want to continue?
I want to call a motion. I just wanted to say that the assumption that the Community Works Fund is based on the population, including the city that goes to the regional district, I hear differently at the regional district, so that may be something we need clarified. I understand that the monies received within the regional district are strictly for the areas A, B, C, D, and E populations, and none is received by the regional district based on the population of the city. And so that's the premise that this is based on. So that would require some clarity. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Palm.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one question, and that is, I know the public's interested in knowing how much city taxpayers are on the hook for the Resource Recovery Center overall. This is, I think it says the final stage of the funding for this project. So my question is to staff with this, once we come to grips with this and go one direction or the other on this. Will we be getting something that, or the residents of Powell River, that states the overall costing of the resource center?
Through the chair, that would be a question for the regional district.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. Any further discussion, questions? All in favor? Motion is passed unanimously. We'll now move to 6.1, committee reports, and I'm going to ask the chair of the December 3rd Committee of the Whole meeting, Councillor Doudt, to provide comment.
Seems like a long time ago, back to December the 3rd, but it was a good meeting. Started at 3:30 that day. Went through the regular stuff. We had a report from the Powell River Public Library about their grant request, a significant portion of money that's provided by the city, and just exactly what they do with that. We had a long discussion about the 5-year financial plan. There were some motions that came up about deferring items. We actually talked about those Tuesday night. So a lot of the work that started off there is already working. We had talked about the 2025 property tax rate ratio analysis, which is, how much does business pay in taxes in the ratio compared to residences. That was an interesting discussion. Passed that on. And we talked about council remuneration. A substantial report was there, and that's back on the agenda tonight. Be finally voted on. I went through a lot of amendments and motions on that one. And where did we get to? Reports for information. We did so much on those earlier reports, the financial report and council remuneration, that the community engagement reports were put off until Tuesday's meeting, which we did. Had a long question period, and we adjourned. It was a good meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Doudt. We'll move now to 6.2, which is the Harbor Users Advisory Committee meeting held October the 2nd, 2024. Minutes are attached. Do we have comments?
Yes, thank you, Sir Chair. I just will say these minutes are posted on our website. We cover a great range of topics in the few meetings we've had with the Harbor Committee. And I'm happy to report that the general discussion is quite substantial on a number of issues. And you can refer to what is on our website to go over the various headings that we're talking about. The minutes that I'm referring to here go back to October 2nd, and that was probably our third meeting of the committee. We have had another committee meeting since then, and our next meeting is going to be held February 5th, which is in the evening at 6:30 in the upper chamber of City Hall, if anybody wants to attend to get the latest. And I'm not going to go over all of these items because we have a lengthy agenda tonight. If you're very interested in Harbor and the fine work that your advisory committee is doing, I encourage you to come out and take part in those meetings firsthand. We have room in the gallery, and you're more than welcome to attend. And worship, based on the length of tonight's agenda, that's it for now.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll now move to committee recommendations. 7.1 is the 2025 meeting schedule. There's a recommendation from staff. Councillor Doudt.
I'll move that council approve the 2025 council committee and special meeting schedule.
Seconded by Councillor Palm. Discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The question, we did amend it, and I didn't check what's on our agenda here to make sure that amendment was what's on the agenda.
I'll ask our acting CAO. Can you answer that tough question?
Through the chair, I'll lean on Ms. Walls.
Thank you through the chair. Councillor Southcott, I don't recall there being an amendment. Are you thinking of something in particular?
Can't hear that.
So could you repeat that, please?
Sorry, Councillor Southcott, through the chair, are you thinking of a specific amendment? I don't recall the schedule being amended.
Yeah, I just found it. I believe we changed the May 13 special council meeting to May 14, if I'm not wrong. And I see on attachment A that hasn't been changed yet.
Through the chair, apologies. You're correct. That did make that change. So that would be the version I did not attach to this agenda. So yeah, apologies for that. Thank you.
Any further questions? Yes, Councilor.
No, go ahead.
So I just would suggest that we change the motion to adopt as amended.
We have seconded for the amended. Any further discussion on the amendment to the motion? All in favor? That's passed unanimously. And now to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's passed unanimously. We'll now move to reports for information. Municipal directors of the Cathett Regional District. Who would like to start? Councillor Southcott.
Actually, I think Councillor Elliott was going to start, and I would fill in any blanks.
Okay, Councillor Elliott.
Can do. So we had a regional district meeting just yesterday. And we had a number of things in our consent agenda and some bylaws that we passed. We started out with a discussion of our schedule over at the regional district as well. And so the regional district did sort of land on a schedule. It was option 5 of the report that works around this. And there was a meeting on May 13th, which was why that was important. So it's good that that happened. We also decided to write a letter to the Savory Island Shores Improvement District regarding the Savory Island official community plan. They'd had a delegation a little while back and we were responding. Regarding the housing needs report, we accepted the report and we decided to write a letter to the minister highlighting concerns with the UBC HART methodology for determining 5 to 20-year housing needs for a rural isolated area. There was some concerns about that. The coastal flood adaptation strategy update on public education, we entered into our record and filed. The 2-lot subdivision Cedar Crest Road electoral area B was approved. Authorized purchase of computers for the Cathett Museum through their regular grant dollars. They normally are not to be used for capital assets. It was thought that computers were short-term enough that they could be considered eligible for the grant, and we authorized that. Endorsed BC Hydro re-greening grant application. We endorsed the new fee bylaw, increasing fees by 5% at the cemetery. And so there was a bylaw later about that. We approved the director's remuneration and expenses at a 2.8% increase as per the CPI of the policy that is current at the board. Asked for board to do a review of travel expenses and per diems. That, I guess, hasn't been done yet. Accepted fire capital asset replacement plan. Accepted the 2025 to 2029 financial plan draft 1 for information. Fire service review for the Malaspina Volunteer Fire Department. We asked that they put money in the budget to include that. We asked the staff to schedule a meeting with Randy Neal for November 7th. We had adopted our final financial plan amendment bylaw number 5951 2024, and that is done annually, and it is an accumulation of all amendments made throughout the year get changed, that it changes the bylaw at the end of the year to be consistent with all of our motions throughout the year. We did 3 readings and adopted the Cathette Regional District Cemetery Regulation Amendment Bylaw, which is the 5% fee increase for cemetery. We adopted, did the 3 readings and adopted the Director's Remuneration and Expenses Amendment Bylaw. Rescinded the motion for the Foundry Anchor table as it was referred to the hospital district. Thanks.
Anything further, Councillor Siltka?
Sounded pretty complete to me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll now move to reports for decision. 9.1 is cybersecurity enhancement.
Good evening, Council. The report before you is a request for funding to further enhance the city's cybersecurity software. The investment request is $77,000 to be funded by the Information Technology Reserve. As an aside, the reserve has been set up for purchases for costs such as these that are not regular information technology costs that are not predictable. The background behind requiring this expense is simply, as we've all seen and as we all know, cyber threats are evolving rapidly, and the risk is extremely high to data information, financial information, and in order to protect and safeguard the city's data information and mitigate as much as possible the risk of a ransom, we need to put more cybersecurity software measures in place. I won't elaborate further, but I thank you for your time and open the floor to questions.
See no question. Oh, Councillor
Yes, through the chair, I'm going to read the recommendation, and if anybody wants to make comments, they can wheel away here. So I will recommend that council direct staff to amend City of Powell River 5-year financial plan bylaw 2742, 2024 to include $77,448 in 2025 for cybersecurity enhancements, and further that the funding be taken from the Technology Reserve.
seconded by Councillor Isaacson. Discussion? Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one comment for the public. It may seem weird that we're not asking more questions, but I think understand that the specifics of the cybersecurity improvements that we might want to make should not be public, because we don't want potential hackers to know what software we use and what decisions we're making to protect ourselves from cybersecurity threats. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, my comments were along the same lines. Was the lack of detail was because the detail would create a security risk, and so we don't do that in a public forum. So thank you.
We have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. 9.2 is the Council Policy 272, Travel Reimbursement. Our Deputy Corporate Officer, did you have any comments?
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing too much. This was drafted based on the direction provided at previous meetings. So I await for further direction from Council, either for amendments and adoption or just adoption. Thank you.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to be clear, there's a couple in the report itself, there's a couple of recommendations in this section of the agenda, specifically looking at the travel policy, which is attachment C. And to start off conversation, I will move that council adopt Council Policy 272, travel reimbursement.
Seconded by Councillor Out. Is that seconded?
I'd like to speak on it.
Yeah. And so we had given staff direction to update or prepare a council travel reimbursement policy. And there was a number of resolutions that were made at that one, and this brings it all together. It makes a little bit more explicit what needs to be included, but were we to want to amend this at all, now would be a good time to do it.
Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, so I just want to point out that I went and printed up my minutes from the last time we talked about this, which was not a real long time ago. And the motion, the main motion about item 3D, or no, I'll get the right one, 4A3, which reads on our draft that we have in front of us, private accommodation shall be reimbursed directly to the council member at $50 per night to a maximum of $20 per event. No receipt required. Now, the motion that council passed was moved and seconded that the expense policy include an allowance for a modest host gift up to a value of $50 per night to a maximum of $200. For the host gift, when staying for free at a friend's or family during conference travel instead of a hotel. And I think the language has changed from what council adopted to here, and in my view, it entirely changes the process to having an option not to stay in a hotel, but to take $50 a night in lieu of a receipted hotel expense. Now, a person may well, under this policy, decide to stay with a friend, or they might decide to sleep in their car, or they might decide, like Councillor Southcott did, to take his boat to Vancouver and pay moorage, which was less than a hotel cost. But I think it was more than $50 a day. So I'm concerned that this is not carefully drafted, and it may cause limitations where we don't want limitations and opportunities where we don't want opportunities. That's my point of view. Just want to point that out, that we're dealing with something different than what council passed.
Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. I had that same point down as an item to bring up for some similar reasons to Councillor Dowd, but more so on the non-receipt part of it. I think I didn't read into it as much as Councillor Dowd had. I do concur with some of his interpretation there. When I had remember this conversation from a couple of weeks ago, I was coming out of that conversation thinking that a thank you to a host gift who has taken us in for 3 to 5 nights, saved the city $1,500 to $2,000 or more, because unfortunately hotels are crazy expensive. That this appreciation gift would be in the form of a gift card, taking them out for a meal, or a bottle of wine or gift basket of some kind, that there was evidence of that gift. I feel like the wording here seems like it's more set up as a per diem versus an actual recognition and validation of that thank you gift.
Okay. Do you have your hand up?
Yes.
Yeah, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair, Mayor. My recollection was we did discuss this idea for a while, and we wanted to avoid a per diem style. My recollection was receipts would be required, and of course wine was off the list because it was against policy. So your gifts would not be allowed to be alcohol. But meals or any other kind of thing that was within the limit, you would provide a receipt and get a reimbursement for the actual gift that you had given. And so it is different in this version than what I had thought we had approved too.
So I'm going to refer to our acting CO. If we want to defer this with the motion on the floor, how should we now proceed?
Through the chair, I'll request Ms. Walls assist with the question.
Thank you. And through the chair, a motion to defer can certainly be made at any time. With regard to the question, it was, or the issue on the floor at the moment, it was recommended to go the route of like a per diem to avoid any complications with things like alcohol or gift cards coming back as a receipt. It's not, auditors don't like to see that, so it provided more flexibility to members of council to provide their host gift with that. But of course, the wording can certainly be changed should you not wish to go with that recommendation. I just need motions for direction. Thank you.
Thank you. I certainly support deferring this because my understand is the initial discussion that took place would result in a significant saving to the city. And I would like to see, as Councillor Doughton and others have suggested, that we defer this so that the appropriate motion can be brought back by staff.
Direction around.
If I can speak, I'd like to.
Yeah, I think Councillor Dought, and then Councillor Isaacson, and then
Did you just make a motion? For deferment?
for deferment,
I'll
yes.
second that.
No. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I
Post-
wanted to
post it.
talk. I didn't know if you were making a motion or not, but you have, so I'd like to talk to deferment, and I wouldn't be against deferment because the language that shows up in this draft is not the same as the language that council voted in favor of. And if we're going to, if we're going to go to the trouble of having a council meeting, have all the councilors here and spend a long time on a late night talking about amendments to get to the language, I think we need to see the language that council came at in the policy. And I would support deferring it to get back to where we were.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. I would, I'm in support of deferring. I did have a second amendment that I wanted to suggest this policy, and we could do that the next time we meet. And so deferring it maybe doesn't finish the discussion on this topic. There might be other things that staff might be able to take away and come back to us with if there are any other questions or concerns that people had with this policy. The other, I mean, it's not an issue with deferment, but because this idea for an inclusion of this policy was kind of, it was made the night of, it didn't come out of recommendations from staff. Had we directed staff to come back to us with options on such a policy, they may have given us options and provided rationale for one or the other, and we didn't have that opportunity. And so I think perhaps staff, you know, our original motion is not reflected here, but perhaps reflects some advice that they were given. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just trying to be generous with staff's rationale for making that different motion. So I don't mind deferring. I would have preferred to allow conversation to go on a little bit further because I have one other amendment that I would have wanted to make. Thank you.
Councillor Baum.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I'm going to speak in favor of the deferment on this item for the reasons that have been stated. And just make one more point, and it's appropriate that this deferral request comes from the mayor because he was not here for the initial discussion of these proposed bylaw changes. So I appreciate your comment, Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm fine with deferring, but our acting corporate officer has asked for some direction around what to bring back to our deferred session as far as what language we want to use. And Councillor Isaacson has indicated she has some more sort of edits she'd like to see or thinks we ought to do. So I'm wondering, process-wise, once we've deferred this motion, can we make separate motions for what it is we're looking to have come back to us, and
Yes.
whether you want to entertain that? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that would include, I think, Councillor Dowd was fairly succinct.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Point of privilege. I forget which motion we're voting on right now.
It's the,
Approval of the policy.
okay. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Now, yes, Councillor Elliott.
With respect to the provisions in the travel reimbursement policy, the 4A3, I move that we change the wording to require receipts. And I don't know how that looks, but the intent is to require receipts for that.
Any other suggestions for staff?
Maybe just a point of clarification. We've referred the passing of this policy to future, and so now we're providing staff some additional direction on what we'd like to see different when they come back to us. But
Correct.
okay, I mean, has the motion been seconded?
No.
Okay.
Yes. Councillor Dowd.
Okay. I feel like our original motion was maybe more fulsome in the intent, because it was about staying in with friends or family. And so, for example, I would like to think that if Councillor Southcott took his boat down to Vancouver, stayed in the harbor, and was much cheaper than a hotel or even the same cost as a hotel, that expense would be eligible. And so that's not quite referenced here as Councillor mentioned. So I think the original motion that we passed at the previous meeting was more fulsome rather than just about the receipt. It was also about family and friends, etc.
Well, I think that's good input for staff in coming back to us. Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Mayor. So I also want to agree with Councillor Isaacson, because the intention isn't clear either. And our intention was entirely to allow us to save money should we have another option, but with consideration for someone who would be good enough to put us up, seeing as we'd probably leave at before 7 o'clock in the morning and not arrive back until 10. So the hosts, certainly normally in the kind of conferences that we do attend, would be providing us with a considerable favor and not doing it for the enjoyment of the visit, particularly. So I just wanted to bring that forward because I think the intent to save money, it would be good to include that in the language here as well in this policy. Thank you.
Councillor Dowd.
And, my opinion is that simply requiring receipts doesn't go to where council was on December 3rd. And the motion we passed on December 3rd quite clearly expressed what the $50 fee was intended to provide, what it was for, how it would be done, and including receipts would be a good idea, in my view, because, if you're going to spend $50 on a bouquet of flowers to give to your friend whose place you're staying on a Monday night, you can get a receipt for that. You don't have to give it to the friend who might have wished you paid $100. But, I think we need to express the intent that council passed on December 3rd. Because it didn't happen in a couple of minutes. We spent a lot of time working on that.
Okay. Oh, yes. corporate officer.
Sorry, was Councillor Elliott's motion seconded? I didn't see a seconder.
I believe it was second by Councillor Doubt. Councillor Isaacson.
So my recommendation for this motion would be to not pass this motion and instead that we direct staff to revisit the original motion and its intention when coming back to us with an updated version of this policy.
I'm okay with that. That's okay. Yeah.
Okay,
I could withdraw the motion if you like, and we could make Councillor Isaacson's motion. So yeah, I would withdraw if everybody's okay with that.
okay. So did we have a seconder for Councillor Isaacson's seconded? Any further discussion?
I just, want to make sure that corporate staff are, we've thrown that. So the motion is to direct staff to revisit the original motion from December 3rd for inclusion.
In the report?
In the next policy version. And I suppose direct staff to revisit the original motion regarding private accommodations so that we're clear what we're talking about.
Any further discussion? Councillor Almeida, did you have a?
Just letting the corporate officer catch up.
Through the chair, if I may ask for clarity, so regarding, the original motion just said accommodation for friends and family. So you're not, the intention behind changing it to private accommodation was to, again, offer flexibility that it can be friends and family or other methods of private accommodation, whatever that may be. So to clarify, we're not wanting any other language but friends and family as was in the original motion.
Maybe I'll continue at the end of at this motion in the policy, comma, specifically reference to friends and family, comma, receipt required, comma, plus a general intention to save the city in accommodation expenses.
Right, Councillor Elliott.
I wanted to ask the corporate officer if the intention around calling it private accommodation was to also take into consideration the situation where Councillor Southcott went and paid moorage and had receipts for that, or would that have been considered similar to a hotel with receipts?
Through the chair, that would the moorage would have been submissible as accommodation receipt, which I believe is what happened. He were to stay on his boat and not pay moorage, something like that could be, or if someone stayed in, trying to think of another example, but this would.
Thank you. So that wasn't a situation where he came under section 4A1 where actual expenses paid for occupancy, and he had receipts, and so it was not part of this other thing. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Doubt, would you wrap this up for us?
I would like to wrap it up. Council made a decision on December 3rd. It was voted on, it was passed, it was carried. It's clear. It said what council's intent was. Councillor Isaacson's motion is just fine. It will give us a report that staff will write up, come back. My hope is it will reflect the main motion that we passed on December 3rd. If it says something different, council will be able to debate it again and make all the amendments and changes that we want at that time and give another try for approval after that. So I'd be quite happy to pass this motion and get on with the rest of the stuff we have to do.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. We are now,
Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry, there were two other items about this policy that I wanted to direct staff to change in the next version. So I move that council directs staff to update item 4A to include other options like, oh, well, sorry, I'm waiting for staff to catch up. If someone's typing the motion, I can't see it where you're at. There we go. Update item 4A to allow for reasonable expenses for moorage or other non-conventional accommodations, with receipts. Just want to make sure it's clear.
We have a seconder? Councilor Armida? Further discussion?
Nope.
No. Yes.
Just that it may be redundant because our corporate officer explained that those are actually already covered under the first provision for actual expenses paid. So I wonder if it's necessary at all.
My rationale is it mentions basic room with single occupancy, and I just wanted to make sure it's explicit that if there are other affordable accommodations that are cheaper, that those are on the table.
A lot of policies just say or equivalent, but yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Call the vote. All in favor? It's passed unanimously.
And the last one is council directs staff to update section B to reference ferry costs.
We have a seconder. Councilor Almeida. Any further discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Sorry.
I have one more item.
Okay, so that passed unanimously, and Councilor Almeida.
Thank you, Chair. And I might be incorrect in this, so the CFO can correct me if I'm in the wrong spot at the wrong time. Attachment D broke down the remuneration forecast, and it talked about the travel budget that is allocated every year, which is 75,000 this year for all of council, was 75,000 last year, I believe. And so since council is taking efforts to reduce our travel costs, and not that I know the exact number, but based on the travel I know our council has done this year, I don't think we've exceeded or come close to that budget. I don't think we need to increase our travel budget in 2025 as we're trying to decrease it right now. I'm realizing as I say this might not have to do with the travel reimbursement policy, but I was going to make a motion to keep the travel budget at the existing 75,000 for 2025 instead of increasing it.
We have a seconder seconded by Councilor Palm. Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott. Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question through the mayor to staff. If this is the right place for the motion in the, is this motion drafted in a way that you can act upon?
Through the chair, this would be captured in the minutes and staff would be able to act on the motion. So that is, thank you for the question. And we would definitely be able to act on this. Thank you.
We have a motion, seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Passed unanimously. I believe that moves us now to 10.1, which is a draft bylaw 2772 dealing with council remuneration. Discussions with staff. Do we have any motions?
I have some motions, but if there are questions before, I'm happy to wait.
Question?
Councilor Armida.
The question to staff, probably the corporate officer. Oh, sorry. Don't mind me. I'm actually looking at the wrong section. Sorry about that, Mayor. Different question. Never mind.
Yes, Councilor
All
Isaacson.
right, thank you. If no other questions, I'll start making motions.
Oh, this,
Oh.
yeah. So, excuse me.
Um,
I was going to ask a question
oh, yeah.
of staff in the preparation of this. I believe there was a reference to New Westminster. And what was the basis? Did we look at all of the cities in the province, cities similar in size to Powell River, or what was the basis of choosing New Westminster?
Through the chair, I'll defer that question to Deputy Corporate Officer Ms. Walls.
Thank you, Mayor. It was the direction.
A point of information, we can't hear you, Corporate Officer Walls.
Sorry, through the chair, that was direction provided by council to use that policy.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
There was a motion at the December 3rd meeting as well.
It was in the report by staff, though.
It was in the report by staff, including copies of the other cities' policies.
Great. I'm just, my question is, how specific and was there intent to look at cities of the roughly the same population of Powell River? Councilor Armida may have the answer.
Ms. Wells, I think I can help you with the answer there. So staff did provide several cities. Actually, this question came up 2 weeks ago. Staff had provided several different municipalities that had similar policies. When the question was asked 2 weeks ago, the answer was also there aren't that many municipalities that have this policy. It's still something in its infancy in terms of conversation that communities are having. I was the one that made the recommendation to choose New Westminster. My rationality at that time was there were aspects to the New Westminster policy that I liked. There were some that I wanted to tweak, and we'll get into that as we get into some motions. But there were aspects of it that, for me personally, I thought allowed someone to take the leave. And I used you as an example, Mayor, where you've needed to leave for the last couple of months. But when you've been able to attend, you've been able to be here, both physically or virtually. And I felt that the same could be said for someone who was on parental care or spousal care for someone who might be ailing at the time, that it didn't have to be all or nothing. And some of the other leave policies that were presented to us seem to be either you're there 100% or you're not there at all. And I liked that New West had a little bit more flexibility in it. So that's the wording at the time, but that's why it's here for us now to review and tweak if we want to edit it to our needs.
Councilor Palm.
Yes, for clarifications to the chair, we don't have a motion on the floor at the moment. So I'm going to speak to table 1 in terms of 10.1 draft bylaw. And all of our discussions on this regard previously, we referred to group benefits, family care, those additional items to kick in the next term of council, which is 2027, end of 26. Oh, I see. Yeah, since we've got maybe 1 month in 26, the figures that are on this table for group benefits and family care, is that a monthly cost at the end of 2026?
Through the chair, group benefits and family care would be monthly costs depending on who would be requiring them.
So just so that everybody knows when this comes back, been hearing a lot of rumblings out there from the public for the incoming council to deal with any inclusion of these type of items in terms of benefits, family care at the city expense, because I don't think we should be weighing into the next council's jurisdiction. I'm going to be speaking loud and clearly against these items when this comes back. I just want to make everybody aware of that. Thank you,
Yeah.
Your Worship.
Okay, did you have your hand up, Councillor Isaacs?
I do. I'd like to make some motions. I'd like to amend clauses 8, 9, and 10. To replace references to 61 and 62 weeks. With 26 weeks.
It's been seconded for a discussion.
Thank you. So my rationale for amending these clauses, I know Councillor Almeida referenced his preference for the new West policy because it's flexibility. And now that that policy comes to us, the amount of time that was included in those policies is also before us, which are a lot. And when I had originally brought forward the idea of including a parental leave policy, I had in particular reviewed the District of Squamish's policy because I knew a councillor on there who had used the parental leave policy, and I checked in with her saying, how did it work? Would you recommend any differences? And she had said that it worked well for her and her council. And Squamish is, you know, a bit similar in size than New West is, and also perhaps because of the demand of the role in this community is smaller than maybe a role as a New West, there is perhaps more opportunity to still engage while on leave. So my rationale for 26 is that it is, first of all, it would be in addition to maternity leave for a member of council who gives birth, but it would be available for any parent who has a new child, whether through adoption or birth, and provides that time to bond with said child, but is a bit more reasonable, given what I think is necessary. And I still do think, though, that these are important to include, because even though the anticipation was to reference this for the next council, I think it's really important when people are running for council that are of an age. I mean, sometimes pregnancies are planned and sometimes they're not, and to have some understanding of what council would look like were someone to you know, have an addition to their family while on leave and having that certainty. But I thought the amount of time was quite a lot, and it could be pulled back a bit.
Okay, I'm going to comment generally on this, and it relates to the other motions. I do not support any of these motions. I think that it's general knowledge that Powell River faces some significant financial issues. Fortunately, we have an excellent corporate officer and financial officer that's dealing with this. But I think for us to look ahead to 2027 at a time when we need to focus on the day-to-day operations and how do we deal as we move through a very challenging period as we decide whether or not taxes are going to increase by 14% or 8%. I just simply cannot support this type of motion. Councillor Pong.
Yes, and through the chair, I just want to clarify for everybody here at the table and for the public. Since we have deferred item or policy 272 for a report from staff, all of these items that we're presently refining right now are coming back for further discussion when the report comes forward. Nothing's written in stone at this point, correct?
Through the chair, this is up to council whether you make motions to give it any readings. At this stage, there isn't direction to bring back a report. These are the motion on the floor is an amendment to the bylaw to move it towards giving it readings. Thank you.
Councillor Doat.
Yeah, I don't want to make any assumptions that things might happen in the future because somebody might do something. Right now, we talked previously about the travel reimbursement bylaw, and we deferred that. Now we're talking about the council remuneration bylaw, which is a different bylaw, different draft. Councillor Isaacson is moving an amendment. We could talk about that amendment. Who knows what's going to happen? I will have an amendment to talk about next, unless there's other people who want to make amendments before me. But I think we should wait and see what happens. We may decide to adopt this tonight, or we may decide to make a bunch of amendments and then defer it. Never know what this council's going to do. So I'd like to talk about Councillor Elliott's amendments. We can get to other ones if they are, and we can move along.
Councillor Almeida.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about the amendment. I appreciate Councillor Isaacson bringing it up. It was one of the items that was on my mind. I was thinking a slightly smaller number than 26 weeks, maybe closer to 4 months instead of 6, but I can live with that or go down to 4. I did feel that 61 was a little much. I think to answer the mayor's concerns, this particular amendment doesn't impact taxation or finances at all because it doesn't have anything to do with council remuneration as it is. We're not paying any more with this particular adjustment than we would be otherwise. I believe what it does try to do, though, is broaden the scope of the field that of the community that might be eligible to run for council, and it opens up the prospect to those that might be in different stages of their life to consider serving their community this way, even though they might have some young ones or other situations facing them at that time. So I'd be in favor of this amendment.
Councillor Southcott, did you?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking at the attachment D, which is a list of the actual costs of this policy. I think the family care line might actually be decreased a tiny little bit, which percentage-wise isn't going to make much difference to the bottom line. But I'm looking at those percentages, and I doubt that they will, except for the one in 2027, will match inflation. So in the spirit of being as cost-effective as we can be, I support this amendment. I think that it's really paring back the original intention without sacrificing it entirely. And I'll speak to that later. Thank you.
I just want to chime in if it's my turn, just for a very short time on costs. So we elect 7 councillors and we pay them. If someone's on a leave, they continue to get paid their full wages. Somebody's on a parental leave or a maternity leave, they're going to get their full wages for 26 weeks. And then also the policy is silent on it, I would assume their pay is going to be reduced after that. This would actually save money, and it provides a shorter period of absence than the 62 to 61 days. And I'm prepared to vote in favor of this amendment and then see what we do with the whole thing as a whole, because I agree with Councillor Alameda. We have to start figuring out who we want to attract and who we want to prevent from running for public office.
It's supposed to prevent anyone.
And I'm not kidding. If we put roadblocks in the way of young people raise a family, we will end up not having any young people running for office. That's the way it is.
Any further discussion on the, yes, Councillor Elliott?
I think the amendment is fine. I do have some concerns about some of the other provisions, but I guess we're just doing one at a time anyway, so I'm okay with this one. But we should get on with it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. All in favor? Opposed?
Got a motion to make.
Okay, so the motion passed 6-1.
Okay.
Councillor Doubt.
I'd like to move that paragraph 6, the heading on paragraph 6, be changed from child care to family care, and that more correctly covers what's in the actual wording of the agreement. And I don't think we should have a disagreement between the title and the contents. Intent was family care, and for those who might be confused about that, there are other people other than children who need care that council members may be responsible for taking care of, and this is an effort to reduce the costs, people who are on council, of those things.
We have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Southcott. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 6-1.
Okay.
Councillor Elliott.
I wanted to change, where was that? Parental leave, notice of, okay, a paragraph 13, C, I want to remove not, so it would read, a council motion is required for approval of maternity parental leave, rather than is not, because council needs to protect its ability to make quorum and cannot predict the future ability to do that. There has to be a way for council to exercise discretion over these leaves. And so I know that having the policy provides some certainty, because you'd have to have a pretty good reason to not approve it, but a good reason might exist if we couldn't make quorum.
Seconder? Councillor Mira.
I'm just curious if the corporate officer caught Councillor Elliott's motion, because it'd be great to see it on the screen, or Councillor Elliott might need to repeat it again.
Yeah, changing clause 13C to remove the word not between is and required.
Through the chair, just for clarity, the community charter does speak to more than 2 members of council not being able to be on leave at a time. Just for your background knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know, and I think this allows, this provision helps us in that regard, in case people are not coming to council and then considering themselves on leave without, anyway, I think it's better this way.
Everybody clear on the motion on the table?
It hasn't been seconded, has it?
I thought you put your little twos up.
It wasn't acknowledged, so.
Do we have a seconder for the motion? Certainly, we do not have a seconder for the motion. Oh, we do have, no.
Ready to make a next one.
All right. Okay, we do not have a seconder for the motion.
Um, my rationale for that is that because the
Wait just a second.
Oh, it's not on the
We can't
Okay.
talk if
Yep.
there is no motion on the floor.
community charter prevails. Okay, so I would like to add a clause to the parental leave section. That says, this policy does not restrict the ability of a member of council to request a leave of absence at another time for another reason.
Seconded?
So this is kind of a two-part motion, and I may have accidentally switched the order. My intention for this is because the purpose of this policy is specifically focused on parental leave, but there may be other grounds in which people want to or need to take leave related to family care, for example, if they have an, there may be other compassionate grounds that council would want to approve a request for a leave of absence if someone's partner was terminally ill and they were looking for some more time to spend with them. I just wanted it to be very clear that council is not, like, there are other reasons that council might consider leaves of absence. This policy is not meant to restrict the types of leaves of absence that a council member might want to request of the rest of council. So my intention was for us to be clear about it not being only about, I mean, this policy is only about parental leave, but there may be other reasons that council members may want to request leaves of absence. And in those cases, it would be up to council to decide whether to grant those leaves.
Just to be clear, has this been seconded? Right, Councillor Om.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the chair. You know, going down this road, the mayor has already spoken about the cost aspect. We are not in the best financial shape. Just going to 227 adds $50,000 to the current remuneration of councilmen in this regard for these clauses. That's a hefty amount of money. First year, first term of the next incoming council. Secondly, we should be doing everything we can at this table to make sure that the people that are going to be elected are here to perform their duties, because this council has 7 members for a reason. It's for voting purposes. And when an absent occurs, it changes the outcome of those votes substantially in many areas where the vote is split. If you have 7 members here regularly, as we are, business gets conducted in a reasonably fashionable way. So adding more leaves is a step in the wrong direction. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Armida.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor, I should say. This amendment that Councillor Isaacson proposes, I believe, is just putting to paper what is already allowable in the charter for a council member to request a leave, and is just making it a little bit more official and in black and white. I don't necessarily know if it needs to be under the parental leave section, but I'll leave that to staff. I feel like this, to answer Councillor Palm's point, any one of us could face a situation tonight. We've heard the wind, at least I heard the wind earlier in our meeting, that sounded like it could have knocked down a tree on someone's house or car or anything else. And any one of us could have a spouse or family member that gets injured, hurt. We've had a house burned down in our city just 2 weeks ago. That could be an unexpected detrimental situation to anyone sitting here. We don't want it to happen, but it might. And I think this just puts it in black and white to allow a little leeway in that, yes, when we're 7, things tend to flow a little bit easier. We don't have any split votes, but life happens sometimes, and this just makes sure that we cover all the bases.
Councillor Southcott, Elliott, and Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. So to be clear, I'm just looking for it, but I'm pretty sure that in the policy as it's stated, this doesn't necessarily mean that we end up paying for an extra leave. So cost increase wouldn't happen. The charter does provide that only 2 council members can be gone with a council of a number of 7 like us at any one time. So the cost concern is not valid in the case of this amendment. We have other policies that basically restate what is in legislation simply for convenience and to make our policies more complete as we can read them. That's partly, I think, why we call them consolidations. So I support it because I don't think that it gives us any, we're not going to lose anything by approving this. And I also support it on the basis of the overall principle that I want to see as broad a opportunity for people to sit at this table as possible. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. The clause is fine to be there or not be there. It doesn't really do anything. It's restating our current practice and which is supported by legislation. And so it's redundant, but it doesn't hurt anything.
Yeah, thank you. And one of my rationales is I think, and maybe perhaps members of the public or even, prospective council members in reading this policy, they might think that, that council only grants policies in the case of children, which is really about a specific demographic of the community. And it is about making sure that it's clear that it's not only about, it's not only child families that are gaining children with their family that have the opportunity to get leave if required.
Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded. Any further discussion? All the motion, all in favor? Opposed? One passed. Okay. Any further? Yes, Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. So I'm going to move that the following clause be added. The parental leave, just parental leave, comma, as described in clauses 8, 9, and 10, can only be used once per term.
We have a seconder for the motion. Councillor Southcott.
So I am not completely convinced on this one. I'm open to hearing the views of other council members. I think my reason for this is that this policy is intended to make it clear for members who may gain children and their families to have some clarity on what they can expect when they become parents. But we also want council members to be here as much as they can during their term. The wording here that I've used does not limit the leave that's specifically granted to the birth parent. So that's something specific that would be retained. And it also is connected to that other that the other one that just passed, which is about, it doesn't preclude council members for asking for a leave at a different time. So it would mean that if a parent, you know, by the miracle of life, became a parent twice in one term, that if they wanted to have parental leave a second time, that would be a council decision, whereas the first term is not, does not require council approval. So I'm open to hearing different views on this, but I wanted to propose it, and I think I could be convinced either way on this one. But yeah,
I'm not in favor of this amendment. I think, frankly, that in just about every employment situation, an individual, if they want maternity leave, has the right under the law to get it. There's no limitation to how many children you can have in what period of time. And I don't think it's necessary or wise for us to go so far as to try to figure out exactly when we could have 2 maternity leaves per term or 2 parental leaves. I think we're overthinking it, and we could survive very well without it. And when it comes time to vote to approve the leaves, we could make our decision.
Great, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Opposed?
there you go.
Defeated. Great. Yes, Councillor.
Before I make a motion, I have a question for staff actually around the inclusion of a clause related to docking remuneration and pay in line with the code of conduct policy. I know there was hesitancy in the past to write it because we don't yet have a code of conduct policy, but my understanding, if 2 policies or bylaws are expected to be adopted at the same time, that it is possible to include that. And since bylaws do take time to change, it would help us to get it all done now. And so I'm wondering if you could provide clarity as to whether a motion to add a clause related to docking pay for code of conduct violations in line with that forthcoming bylaw would make sense at this time.
Through the chair, yes, so one of the previous reports that came to council had wording for a provision to reduce remuneration for breaches of the code of conduct. Upon making this motion, council had deemed that the conversation or the decision was out of order because there wasn't a code of conduct adopted yet. But we do run into a bit of a chicken and the egg scenario where you don't have a code of conduct bylaw adopted, but the code of conduct bylaw has a provision for referencing the remuneration bylaw, but that's not adopted yet. So you have both bylaws neither adopted, but that would reference each other. We did check with legal, and barring that there's not going to be years difference where between the adoption of the bylaws, if they're going to be adopted within a reasonably close time between each other, then it's fine to have those provisions in there. The provision in the remuneration bylaw, or the suggested wording that was offered previously, didn't reference the content of the code of conduct bylaw, just the bylaw itself. And so we did check with legal, and that's fine. So if you wanted to make that motion at this time, there wouldn't be any procedural issue with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I don't have that language in front of me, and I don't know if you do. I would like to move for the inclusion of the pay docking policy as written in the previous council agenda, or committee of the whole agenda.
Through the chair, I can try to find that language. Might just take me a quick moment here.
We could wait until we deal with one of them at a meeting.
I'm against
Good
it.
point, Councillor Dote.
Okay.
So that's a good point.
Sorry, my suggestion was that sounds like a lot of work for the acting corporate officer to go and look and dig out a past resolution and get it to be in front of us when it's not on tonight's agenda. We're not adopting the code of conduct tonight, as far as I know. It's unlikely we are going to be adopting this bylaw tonight. We've got time, deal with them together at a future time.
So we have a motion. All in favor?
I think it wasn't on the floor
Oh,
properly.
wasn't on the floor. Let us, yes, Councillor Isaacson.
So I move that the City of Powell River Remuneration Bylaw 2024 be read a first time, as amended, be read a first time.
Councillor Almeida, are you seconding that? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Oh, wait a minute. I didn't think we'd be doing this, but we are. So I just want to make my position clear. I think, you know, these are significant changes to remuneration for council. They happen largely, almost entirely in 2027 or in the last month of 2026, where we will have a new council. Plenty of time for them to reconsider it if they think they have a better idea. These all address basic human issues and basic needs. And I agree with those who say we should do whatever we can to open the doors of council so people can participate without there being a particular penalty for the duties that they have with their children or family or community. And the more we do that, the more likely we are to be able to welcome a wider demographic of people be representatives on council. That's why I'm voting in favor of this. I could argue with a lot of the details, but I'd rather have a policy and get on with it.
Yes.
Yeah, to speak to the motion, in reading this, my intention would only be to go so far as giving a second reading. It still allows time at a later council meeting when we get to third reading to still include amendments, but at least it moves the process along. And similar to the rationale that Councillor Dowd prescribed, I want the door to be open and as clear as possible to a wide variety of community members that do not, that, you know, are growing up in a world increasingly dominated by gig work and part-time employment and cobbling together a living, and it being really clear that even if you're not retired or independently wealthy, you could still make it work. And this gets us closer to making it work for more people. And so I support reading it a first time, and I will propose that we read a second time and tonight just to move things along, but it would not be final tonight.
Any further discussion? Yes, Councillor Elliott.
I would be okay with reading once or even twice, but I wouldn't be okay with passing any bylaws tonight simply because we haven't, for the benefit of the public or anybody, published the exact version that we're trying to adopt. And so I would take issue with that. So you stating your intentions was good because I was about to protest. But yeah, I could do, you know, it gets it on the books and says we're going to consider this bylaw. It allows for staff to publish it again on a future agenda where we would have even another opportunity to make sure it is what we want it to be and give the public time to respond to that. So, okay.
Any further discussion? Councillor Palm.
Yeah, through the chair, I agree with Councillor Elliott that for the public notice, first reading's a good idea so that the public knows what's coming at us at the next meeting in the new year in this regard, that they have time to prepare. And I wouldn't go any further than the first reading because that's all that's necessary at this point. But I just want to make the other additional point that the council that's elected in end of 226 going into 227 can rescind or change any of these bylaws. So I just want to make that point for the public.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a motion. All in favor? Opposed? Passed unanimously. Yes.
I move that City of Powell River Council Remuneration Bylaw 2024 as amended be read a second time.
Second by Councillor Armita.
And just to reiterate, it's only after third reading that revisions can't be made or the process becomes a little bit more complicated. So doing two readings does exactly what Councillor Elliott and Councillor Palm shared, that the version with amendments would be on a future agenda where we would then be considering third reading, and before doing so could make further amendments if we found them, for example, like the Code of Conduct pay one. So this again gets things moving.
All right, we have a motion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Okay. Sorry.
You opposed?
Any opposed? One opposed. Thank you very much. Motion passed 6-1. We'll now move to item 10.2, which is a draft bylaw credit card recovery fee. Yes, Councillor Almeida.
I think this is fairly cut and dry for most of council, so I'm happy to propose the readings and give some rationale. And then looking at the time, I would put in a request for a bio break after we are done with 10.2.
Go ahead.
So I will move that the City of Powell River Fee Bylaw 2092-2005, Amendment Bylaw 2773-2024 be read a first time.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott. All in favor?
Do you want to explain or
You can explain it the
just
second
explain it? Okay, I can explain the second time too, sure. I'll call the vote.
Go ahead.
All right, I'll explain it now. Sure. Just for those who are watching online or in the gallery, this was brought to us on Tuesday at the Committee of the Whole by the CFO. And due to some changes in credit card laws and some openness now in the system the city has, this allows City Hall to now add a credit card recovery fee for only specific services, which is property taxes and utilities, things that were typically void of being paid for by credit card due to the cost of the fee. Now, considering the price of property taxes, I can't imagine anyone wants to pay the credit card fee on top of their property taxes, but this gives you the opportunity to do so if you wish to have those points go for your property tax. We haven't voted yet.
Councillor Southcott.
Mm-hmm. No?
Thank you, Mayor.
Voted
Wait, even from
first. but
Yeah, you
not
could
the
do the next
second
one.
And not the third.
Okay, well, I can read this. I didn't think we had voted, but okay, sure. I move that the City of Powell River Fee Bylaw 2092-2005, Amendment Bylaw 2773-2024 be read a second time.
Second by Councillor Isaacson. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
And I move that City of Powell River Fee Bylaw 2092-2005, Amendment Bylaw 2773-2024 be read a third time.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott.
Have a
Yes.
comment?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to Councillor Almeida's comments, and that is that if the city did accept credit cards and not charge the fees back, then all the rest of taxpayers would pick up the cost for that credit card charge. So this is being fair, giving people opportunity and being fair to everyone else as well.
Okay, we have a motion. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, a really short comment. Just to clarify that fees that are currently accepted by credit card, like dog licenses and mortgage and business licenses, will still be accepted by credit card, and the fees will not be charged in those cases. And staff did share the reason why this is moving so quickly. Staff shared on Wednesday, which is the first time that we saw it, is that there was staff did some excellent negotiation work, and that agreement is due by the end of the year, and so we want to get that in and get the preferred rate that we received.
We have a motion that's been seconded. All in favor? Passed unanimously. We will take a 8-minute break.
8 minutes.
Could I ask our CAO a question?
Yeah,
Regarding this bylaw with the third reading and not, we have to wait probably till after Christmas to make the adoption happen. Is that gonna work for you?
Through the chair, yes, the actual deadline is in January, but we needed the first 3 readings in December to
Before the-
happen so we could
okay.
adopt it. Yes, thank you very much.
Now you scared me. We can make as many meetings as.
we've got lots of them.
Okay, we're going to move to 10.3, which is draft bylaw 2758, zoning amendment 127-6954 Alberni. Councillor Almeida.
Thank you. I don't know if staff has much to add to this. We had this report a couple weeks ago. I was actually impressed and thankful, whether it was planning staff or the developer or a combination of both. The report was very thorough, that didn't require many questions, came with a floor plan and or drafted layout and everything else of the building. And it seemed to be a good use of space of the property right next to the Service BC office right now. So looks like a good use of that development. So I will start us off with I move that the City of Powell River zoning bylaw 2100, 2006, amendment bylaw 2758, 2024 be read a first time.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott. Any discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that City of Powell River zoning bylaw 2100, 2006, amendment bylaw 2758, 2024 be read a second time.
By Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
And I move that City of Powell River zoning bylaw 2100, 2006, amendment bylaw 2758, 2024 be read a third time.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to 10.4, which is draft bylaw 2769, zoning amendment 128-0 Glacier. Yes, Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. Because there is a suggestion that we rescind part of a previously made motion, I'm wondering if staff could speak to a little bit to the reasoning for that. Because before I ask questions.
Through the chair, Ms. Walls, would you be able to answer this question, please?
Jason, Mr. Cow.
Through the chair, correct me. Ms. Walls, you can attempt it, but no, I'd rather call on Director Gao, please, and thank you very much. I apologize, everyone. Just making sure you were all awake.
Good evening, Council. Hopefully you can hear me. I can speak a little bit about this report. It is essentially an oversight on the part of staff and something we noticed as we were getting ready to put 3 readings before you. The oversight is, as I said, straightforward. It relates to the requirement that the applicant be required to complete the subdivision prior to rezoning, and upon further review, realized quite quickly that we couldn't actually complete on a subdivision without the rezoning going ahead first, because the approving officer wouldn't be in a position to approve lot sizes that couldn't be met in the current zone. Like I say, a relatively simple oversight, probably just a little bit tired on our part, but we caught it beforehand. And so tonight you have a recommendation before you to rescind the subject condition related to that requirement, and simply the last condition there being related to the contribution towards the Affordable Housing Reserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Almeida.
I'm ready to, I can read the motions. I believe if staff can confirm, these are 5 individual votes, I think.
Through the chair, yes, please.
Okay. I move that subject condition 2A, included as part of Council Resolution number 24398, moved on November 21st, 2024, be rescinded.
Seconded by Councillor Isaacson. Any further discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move prior to zoning approval being granted, the applicant is required to work with staff to finalize a voluntary community amenity contribution in the form of a $500 cash contribution per lot created for deposit into the city's Affordable Housing Reserve Fund.
seconded by Councillor Southcott. No discussion, all in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that the City of Powell River zoning bylaw 2100, 2006, amendment bylaw 2769, 2024 be read a first time.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that City of Powell River zoning bylaw 2100, 2006, amendment bylaw 2769, 2024 be read a second time.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that City of Powell River zoning bylaw 2100, 2006, amendment bylaw 2769, 2024 be read a third time.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to draft bylaw 2756, which is the procedural bylaw, and the draft bylaw 2756, 2024. Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions for staff on this one for clarification. I will look at section 33.2. Jump down to it myself. I just wanted clarity because I think this has happened a few times in our own meetings as well. So it talked about, or talks about, a motion to amend the main motion may not be amended, which I'm okay with. I just want to be clear, to clarify, that means that we wouldn't have a amendment to an amendment. We would have to approve an amendment first or vote an amendment first and then move an amend an amended motion. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Another question, if you don't mind, Chair. Into section 36.2 is crossed off, but 36.3 references subsection 2, which is now crossed off. And so I was wondering if that would make subsection 3 redundant.
Through the chair, it would. Looks like a few too many late nights on my part. So yes, that would be also removed. I do have a couple notes on this. You did jump right in, so that's fine. But if this was part of that, just to follow up from discussion from last meeting. But just to answer your question, yeah, section 3 would be also removed. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
Any further questions on the bylaw? We have,
I've got one. Nope.
we have a motion.
I have a question first. So those changes that Council Almeida referenced that our corporate office says it will be changed, does that mean we should be reading this as read as amended?
Through the
You read it?
chair, yes. Thank you.
Okay, I can read then.
Thank you.
I move that the City of Powell River Council Procedure Bylaw 2756, 2024 be read as amended a first time.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott. Further discussion? Councillor Palm.
Just want to clarify, Your Worship, through the public, that we now have a legal draft just before us tonight, and there's been a number of changes, and it was quite confusing, I believe, for the public, with numerous renditions on the city website previously in this regard. So just for myself and council and everybody in here and watching and the public, when it comes to delegations, I just want to clarify for the public, right now, this new one states that both council and committee of the whole, when adopting agendas in regards to public input, where presiding members will permit up to 3 members of the public to make oral presentations at both of those meetings. Am I correct, Corporate Officer?
Through the chair, sorry, were you referring to delegations or the public input period?
Two different things.
Public input period number 18, yes. Section 1.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So up to 3 members of the public will be able to speak during this section of the meeting.
So both, either council or committee, it applies to both of those meetings, correct?
That is correct.
And further, council, in terms of 18.2, can permit more than 3 members if there is a unanimous vote. Unanimous gives me a little bit of concern. I think it should be a majority vote myself, but we can debate that, I guess, down the road. I'm just putting council on notice that I think that that wording should be changed down the road before we have final adoption. And the one other big change in terms of public input and delegation requests, this document does not stipulate anywhere in here that you have to fill out a separate form that goes to the CAO for review. Am I correct in that regard?
Through the chair, there's no, there's a form for delegations to fill out that would go to the corporate officer.
Yes, just the week before they have to submit what their presentation to, I think it's on the Tuesday before the following week of the meetings, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
Yeah.
Yes.
Before Councillor Elliott gets to second reading, I had one thought to throw out, we'll call it a motion, I guess, to throw out to council. In section 6, it references starting our closed meetings at 5:30 on the night of council meetings. And the thought it came to me today that 5:30 closed meeting many times would not give us enough time to discuss whatever matters need to be discussed and closed. It becomes really tight to get that meeting done at 6:30, 6:45 when we have community members coming in at 6:40. So I'd like to propose a motion for section 6.2A, section II, to change 5:30 to 5 p.m. to close meetings before council.
Seconded by Councillor Isaacson. Any further discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously.
Did you want me to read the next motion?
Please.
I move that City of Powell River Council Procedure Bylaw 2756, 2024, as amended, be read a second time.
By Councillor Southcott. No further discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to item 12.1, which is community safety and supportive housing. Councillor Palm.
Yes, I'll read the motion and then have a few comments, Your Worship, through the chair. So, community safety and supportive housing. Whereas the City of Powell River is committed to ensuring the safety and well-being of all residents, including those living in supportive housing and emergency shelter. And whereas current operator and supportive housing facility and emergency shelter in Powell River has not sufficiently contributed to alleviating safety concerns in the surrounding neighborhood, including ongoing issues with crime, theft, vandalism. And whereas these issues are negatively impacting the quality of life of local residents, businesses, and emergency responders, therefore be it resolved that the City of Powell River requests through a Freedom of Information request a copy of the existing contract between BC Housing and Lift Community Services for the operation of the existing supportive housing unit located at 4910 Joyce Avenue, Powell River, and that the City of Powell River request that BC Housing ensure that any future operator demonstrates a strong commitment to community safety and effective management and support of both resident and community needs, and that BC Housing consider input from the City of Powell River in regard to neighborhood concerns and expectations prior to issuing a new contract, and that the City of Powell River request a financial contribution from BC Housing to assist with security, safety, and regular cleanup in the neighborhood surrounding the supportive housing and shelter buildings in response to issues perpetrated by those facilities being located in close proximity to each other and residential neighbors, and that a copy of this request be forwarded to the MLA for additional assistance.
Seconded.
Now, in terms of where this came from, I want the public and everybody to be fully informed. Full disclosure, and this motion was sent to me by one of our residents who has been monitoring what's happening in the community of Sechelt. A similar motion to this, which was a little bit stronger wording, which they altered at their meeting a couple of weeks ago, is very similar to what they passed. So I just want the public to know this has been passed elsewhere. And I believe the regional district also yesterday did a motion in regards to the hospital board on in this regard as well. So this is kind of snowballing to send a message to government and our service providers and our new MLA that we will hopefully be seeing and coming to talk to us shortly on this regard. It sends the message. So having said that, now that you know the background, I just want you to hear the similarity faced by the council in Sechelt as to the similarity, the concerns we're hearing from residents here in Powell River, because I received an email from the writer of this in Sechelt thanking me for putting this on the docket. And I'm going to share a few comments because I listened to their council dialogue in this regard when it was brought forward. And here's some of the pertinent points that they made. And please excuse me if I'm making a number of points because it's important. So number one, it was said in their chamber, this is no slight regarding the staff that is working at the facility in Sechelt. A change is required. 2, not providing resources regarding the safety of residents around the facility is important. It must be done. We need to turn the page on the way the facility is being operated. Our MLA needs to be informed. Our new MLA needs to be informed before we meet with her. If this is what is needed to bring about change, so be it. We are not fully aware of what is going on in the facility or around the facility. That's speaking to their council. And I just want to say what I have learned, we get far more information here in Powell River from LIFT than what they are getting down there from their service provider. That was stated to me by the counselor that wrote this. Number 7, that's us, the council, wear the fallout, and we need to address our citizens' many concerns. We want to see the agreement regarding the working of the contract and resources that are intended to be provided. We have never seen a contract. I can assure you of that. And there's just a couple of more. Another comment, this needs to be looked at in order to address our community's concerns. We need the info before our meeting with the new MLA. We need to see the contract and what it states and what is to be provided. Things are not working well here, and that is down there. We need the province to come to the table. And lastly, we are the ones that ask for help from the province, meaning council, on this issue. That's who we are. I don't think you can get much similarity as to where we are in this issue by listening to these comments and the concerns they have down there in their council chamber, because we have many of the same. So that's why this is on the table tonight, Council, and I hope we will endorse this to send a loud voice to the province and all those involved in the care of the residents in that facility and the care of our citizens that live in close proximity. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm grateful for Councillor Palm for you bringing this to us tonight, because it's timely. It absolutely addresses a need. I absolutely do not debate that resources, as you referred to, are lacking. I'm looking forward to the opportunity that we'll have to meet our MLA. I'm expecting that's going to be on the 7th of January, along with the RD is looking at that date as well. What I do feel is that we need to do more than send a message, and I think we can do more than send a message. So I would support this, except that I find some real faults in the wording. And I wish that I'd had a bit of an opportunity to work on it, be a part of working on it before it actually came to council. So I just want to go through a couple. So the second whereas basically is based on an assumption of LIFT's mandate. And we don't know what that is because, as you said, we haven't seen a contract. However, we did have the executive director of LIFT here on Tuesday to our committee of the whole meeting. And I asked her a very pointed question about that and expected to get a definitive answer. The answer I heard was that LIFT is interested in doing more than what their actually defined mandate for which they are financed. And I thought that was a pretty generous answer. But I still don't believe that LIFT has the kind of responsibility that we have hoped they actually have. And consequently, I don't think that they are capable of doing what implicitly has been or explicitly has been expected of them here. I just want to target one more paragraph here, and that is the first, therefore be it resolved, the first paragraph, and that's to submit an FOI to get their contract. That is implicitly antagonistic to who I think should be a partner with us in working towards more than advocating, but basically making demands of the province, because I think it's no less than that is really required of us now. And we have that ability as leadership in this community. The province, what I've noticed over the past decade I've been sitting here, is senior governments are supporting initiatives that they can believe in, financially, locally. And that is, we've looked at it as downloads, but really if you want to take another look at that, opportunity has been offered to us, and that opportunity has had grant funding behind it. So if we can ask them for what will work for us here, I'm pretty confident that the provincial agencies that are responsible, and now the mental health and addictions has been lumped back into health. So it would basically be the health ministry and the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs. Interesting that those two are now joined together. So maybe that gives us an advantage because we'll have one minister to talk to. I want to remind us that over the past few years, 2 or 3 years, we've had a number of different groupings of people, organizations. First one I want to mention is the Community Action Team. That initially was a combination of, I think, 50 or 60 different individual groupings of people, or organizations, governmental, non-governmental, community, a whole wide spectrum. Now, their mandate was to look at the drug overdose crisis, and that's very central to the problems that we now face that have escalated since that organization got together, and it is still working. Their resources could be utilized, I think. We have LIFT themselves as an organization, and we significantly now have an executive director in LIFT who spent a good number of years working in an agency very much like the Lookout agency that now runs various supported housing organizations. They were in existence. They started in the downtown east side. So we have a local resource in our executive director, in the executive director of LIFT, who has worked in this kind of setting, in this situation, and has experience of conditions that we're facing here now, but haven't before just a few years ago, but were faced for decades in the downtown east side of Vancouver. We have us, council. There was a community action or community advisory committee set up by LIFT previously that hasn't met for a long time. And then there's the Westview ratepayers, and which includes the representatives from the neighboring neighborhoods. Recently, I've been involved in conversations with the Westview ratepayers president, with the board chair for LIFT, with the LIFT executive director, and others. And there is real interest in putting a group together that would work on refining exactly what's being asked for in this resolution, and then providing something that's much more focused and more directed, more relevant to our community and our exact situation. And I think amongst the people involved in the organizations that I've already listed here, there could be a fair bit of ideas as far as what we could actually do as a community, and then ask for provincial support for that. But that isn't something that's really happened yet, and possibly item 12.2 on our agenda may be an answer for that, but I will get to comments on that when we get to 12.2. For the moment, I would love to support this, but I can't support it because of the fundamental faults that I find with it. But I think it is a good point to start with so that we can work forward. Thank you, Councillor Palm, for bringing it, and I really look forward to moving us forward on this. Thank you.
We'll hear from Councillor Doudt, and then we'll hear from the mayor.
I'll be on the list too.
I'm not going to be microphone down so you can hear me. Well, I'm not going to be in favor of this motion. I want to remind everybody that when council passed the first 3 readings of the 2 zoning amendments for the highway right-of-way that the new supportive housing would be built on, we also agreed to send a letter to LIFT and BC Housing and our MLA and invite them all to get together with the city and possibly a public meeting to talk about exactly the things that are talked about in this program. This isn't an olive branch or an approach or an invite to a friendly meeting. It starts off by a freedom of information request. You know, Councillor Southcott thinks we're going to meet with the minister on the 7th of January. I'll tell you, I don't think by the 7th of January, BC Housing and LIFT and the provincial government are going to agree on what to release and how much should be redacted from the freedom of information request that we send. I guarantee you it won't make them feel warm and fuzzy and happy. Next item I see is that BC Housing ensure that any other future operator demonstrates a strong commitment to a number of things. And we've heard the LIFT operator here making a strong commitment to all those things. And that, just the comment in the wording is confrontational. We have asked already, or we should have asked already, and we should ask really soon. We should write that letter to all those people and ask for that meeting so it can happen as soon as possible. And that would be to get the neighborhood concerns in front of the people that can make a difference, which is BC Housing, LIFT, and our local MLA, because the money is going to have to come from somewhere. Fourth one that I can't avoid pointing out is that I think we need to be careful what we ask for. Because the fourth question is asking BC Housing to assist with security safety. That doesn't ask them to pay for it, it asks them to assist. And every time I've asked somebody to assist with somebody, a lot of times they've said, great, we'll cover 10%, you cover 90%. Who is going to cover the other part of the assist? The BC Housing doesn't. You know, I think we have a fairly good chance of talking to BC Housing and LIFT if we keep it on a professional basis and as positive as we can to get them to make contributions to security, because it's a reasonable thing to ask for. So I think we've already done what we need to do to get this motion. I think this is antagonistic, and I don't think I'll be supporting it.
Great. Those of you that were at the Committee of the Whole on Tuesday heard me talk about my experience with this supportive housing project. So just a quick review. Over 3 years ago, as president of the Ratepayers Society, the Westview Ratepayers Society, I became aware of the significant negative effect that the Joyce project was having on the community. I organized in total 5 different meetings so that elected officials, LIFT, and others could come together and fully understand the extent to which the neighborhood had suffered. And I used an example of, at that time, an 81-year-old woman who had lived there for over 50 years. She could not leave her windows open during the summer. She could not leave anything in the backyard. She was afraid to walk around the community that she'd walked around for 50 years. So after 3 years, I said, let's find out why BC Housing and LIFT have done nothing. So I went to New Westminster and talked to the mayor. So why New Westminster? New Westminster has the highest number of supportive housing units per capita in all of BC. Do they have the problem in New Westminster that we have here? No. The simple answer is they have organizations like Lookout that have demonstrated over years that they understand the challenges of operating a supportive housing project. I also went to Abbotsford met with the ED of a housing supportive project there. I also talked with neighbors living 40 feet away from that project. Nobody in that neighborhood had ever had a concern. Why? Because the people that were running that project understood what would be required to be benefit to the people who lived in that supportive without negatively impacting on the community. So I have talked with BC Housing. I have talked with LIFT over the last 3 years. And I've pointed out to them very simply that the work of Dr. William Glasser has been used around North America to allow groups like Lookout and Archway to provide a service in a community without the negative impacts that we're seeing here. So you can cherry pick all you want. Councillor Palm's motion, but that's all it is. It's just cherry picking. I mean, after 3 years, BC Housing and LIFT have completely ignored the issue that they saw here and were advised in Powell River. With the question of the new executive director at LIFT, I asked the obvious question. Would somebody take on this job with the experience that Councillor Southcott said she had and not understand the trauma that one of LIFT's project has caused in Powell River? No way. I mean, she spoke very well about her experience. She must have known the challenges that exist. And in my humble opinion, when you bring in a new executive director or a new CEO and they understand what the problem is, they work on that solution immediately. I've seen no indication that she used her experience and knowledge and connections to immediately deal with that issue. Did she approach the city? The city got a note from a staff member at LIFT after she became executive director, asking the city to come and explain what they do to the LIFT staff. No sense at all. So to me, the only way that Powell River is going to move forward is to get a new organization running that'll have a huge positive impact. And then the majority of the citizens of Powell River will see the benefit of having a good management team in place, and they will look at the benefits that a second supportive housing can have, knowing that there's very likely going to be minimum or no negative impact. So I am very supportive of this motion, and let's quit cherry picking and get on. Now, any other? Councillor Palm. Oh, sorry. Councillor Elliott.
First round still, aren't we?
Yeah,
Thank
please.
you, Mayor. So I do think words matter. I think they matter a lot. I think when we are trying to do intergovernmental relations with our provincial counterparts, that we should be asking, not demanding. I don't think an FOI process is appropriate if you haven't first asked. You should ask first rather than just go throwing out hammers all over the place. It's just not good etiquette. It's not good relationship behaviors to do intergovernmental that way. And so I am perfectly willing to pass motions that help move us toward collaborating and solving problems. This is not this motion. I'd be very happy to work with someone to come up with that type of motion. I'm not prepared to support things that presume guilt or throw ideas that LIFT is not part of the solution. I think we've seen LIFT come here time and time again and try very hard to work with us. Maybe we don't have the recipe just yet. I think the willingness is there. I think the people who work there are got their hearts on their sleeves and they're trying very hard. I think they need better support. They probably need more funding. The advisory group that we speak of, I belong to, and as did some other folks. That was funded and set up by BC Housing and canceled by BC Housing. It may have been, you know, the workers delivering that service were LIFT and coordinating it, but it wasn't them that canceled it. It was BC Housing that canceled it. So I think I'd like to ask staff if we've made progress in setting up our meeting, and because that matters too, because why would we want to kibosh a meeting that's in the works by sending rude letters? But
through the chair, I will direct the question to Ms. Walls, please.
Through the chair, I think we're balancing some vacations right now, so I haven't been able to reach out to the rest of the team, but at this point, I don't believe a letter has been sent yet. Thank you.
okay. I know that our new MLA is willing to meet with us, and she's showing that and demonstrating that in her words and deeds. So I don't think there's an issue there. I think the amount of communication we have with LIFT is considerably better than what they were having in Sechelt, and the situation is quite different. I also talked to the councillor. He contacted me actually because I know him, and he said that he didn't think that this motion that was verbatim put forward really applied in Powell River the same way it did there. The operator that they were frustrated with was one from out of Vancouver. They had no local presence other than the shelter itself, and they were completely unresponsive. That isn't the case here at all, and to say that it is just not appropriate. So I would be in favor of a motion that indicates that we have issues and everybody, including LIFT, is part of the solution, and we want to meet with the province to get better supports. That's what I'm in favor of. I'm not in favor of blaming LIFT for anything. I'm not in favor of trying to strong arm the province because I don't think we'll get anywhere that way. So that's why I'm not going to be voting for this motion.
Ms. LaPon.
Just going to address some of the concerns council's brought up through the chair. First of all, this motion is simply about communication. It's not directed at LIFT in any which way. It's to try to help LIFT by bringing in further resources and funding so that they can do a better job, and also support the mayor on his track to up the ante to bring another provider in for comprehensive care, which is what we need. That's what the people need. Not just a roof, but comprehensive support. So that's why this is important tonight, to start the ball rolling and the dialogue that goes along with it, because I can honestly tell you, this may not be totally applicable to the Powell River situation, but I'll tell you about the effect that it's had in Sechelt, and that is that they have already had 2 meetings when this is passed 2 weeks ago with their current provider, with BC Housing, and all have already had a meeting with their MLA in this regard, who wasn't aware of many of these concerns of their constituents. They're bringing her up to speed as this progresses. That's why it's so vitally important that we send the same message in unison with Sechelt. We work together as a region, just like the hospital board.
Yeah, they didn't say
All of those aspects coming into play here that are so vitally important. And Councillor Southcott, I'm not sure why you're speaking out against whereas paragraph number 2, because all it it really refers to as safety concerns. That should be our number one priority. Safety of our citizens and safety of the people living in our supportive housing facility. Secondly, you refer to, you have problem with therefore, in regards to the contract. Well, I don't know where you've been, but I've never seen a contract and I don't think you have. We need to know the benefit, what that contract says and see if they're providing those services. And what's not being provided so that we can address it. Councillor Dowd talks about sending the wrong message. We're not sending the wrong message here by speaking out and making everybody aware of our concerns. That's our job. And, you know, I've heard Councillor Dowd say a couple of times now, I don't want to muddy the water in terms of the funding that we may get for the second supportive housing.
If you're going to quote me, Councillor Palm, I'd like you to do.
Point of order.
I'd like you to quote me correctly.
Okay, so maybe I misheard you, but the
I
last.
think you did, yeah.
Last meeting, you were talking about money. This is not about money. This is not about resources. This is about community safety and sending a message. And don't think I'm getting riled up here, Councillor Dowd. I'm just trying to state the case of where we are. So I'll leave you alone, Councillor Dowd. I had other things that I'll address that you brought up, but I won't bother. This is simply a case of downloading, a cost to the city in terms of emergency services, affecting our firefighters, affecting our ambulance crews, affecting our professionals, which are, I think, referred to as doctors. And those doctors are not allowed to speak up at LIFT meetings. They've been shut down, the ones that want to come forward. And others have been seen to throw their hands in the air and say, I can't take anymore. Our professionals need support. That's why this is so important. I don't think I can say much more in terms of we need to send a message. Mayor, thank you.
Please. So I'm going to respond to a couple of comments that Councillor Elliott said because I think they were misleading. The issue of intergovernment relations and relationships between a municipal government, province, and the feds. And I'm speaking from experience of being a chief of staff in Ottawa, where I regularly dealt with both provincial and municipals. I've been president of one of the largest ratepayers association in Toronto, regularly met with the mayor. And as I indicated, I started the Westview Ratepayers Society here. When you have an issue of a government agency not listening to a request from a municipal city, and that is what has happened here in Powell River. I'm just repeating that I met with BC Housing, met with LIFT numerous times, and all I got was no real interest in solving the problem of the 81-year-old lady who was afraid to go outside of her house. So here's the situation. We can continue to babble and pretend that they're good people and they're going to do stuff, and we'll be sitting here a year from now and nothing will have changed. At some point, after you've acted in a very professional manner, you've worked through the system, and you've got no respect, you have to say enough is enough. And you have to take a more aggressive approach. And that is what we need to do if the people in the community around the LIFT facility are going to feel safe again. And I think it is totally ridiculous to think that by being affirmative about what's important to the citizens of your city, that there will be prejudicial experience. And I just remind everybody what the premier of this province said after the last election. He said they listened and they understood that some of their policies have not had the desired effect. So for us simply pointing out that in Powell River, their policy of an approach for running supportive housing hasn't worked. Thank you.
Except for that's not what the motion says.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have any further discussion? Councillor Almeida.
Member of the delegation, a member of the gallery just said the thoughts I had in my head. The original motion that CSHIP Council brought forward 2 weeks ago, or even going back to whatever notice of motion that they brought forward a couple weeks ago, was different than the motion that got amended or was voted on. And if you look at the minutes, it was amended a couple of times. I haven't had the chance to watch the video. I wanted to. So I'm not sure where I stand just yet, but my feeling, based on the feedback we've received from our CEO, who has reached out to BC Housing when we have wanted meetings, is what do they want to meet about? Because our past requests for meetings have been vague and have not given our staff enough legs to stand on to request meetings from BC Housing. So yes, this is wordy. Maybe it's not the perfect wording. Maybe it's a little harsh, but it's asking for some specifics. We'll go with that. And if we want to soften it up, if we want to wordsmith a little bit, we can do that. We can take a paragraph and wordsmith it and modify that to make that request. As Ms. Walls has shared, the original request of BC Housing hasn't been made yet. And I haven't had a chance to look back and see exactly what the specifics of that request are. But my guess is if I look back at our November meeting, they might not have been specific enough to give our staff enough information to provide to BC Housing to say this is what our council wants. Thank you.
Councillor Isaacs.
Thank you. I know Ms. Wells provided an update on the status of the meeting with BC Housing and BCH, but in a kind of a sidebar conversation with a staff member, I actually thought that the lines of communication on getting a meeting were already opened, and maybe Mr. Gao was involved in those. I'm wondering through the mayor to staff if Mr. Gao has any other updates on progress on getting that meeting with Vancouver Coastal Health and BC Housing and possibly other partners.
Through the chair to Councillor Isaacson, yes, I can say that those lines of communications are open. We are openly discussing when they would be coming to council. We're looking at meetings in January or early February. So that is actively happening right now. That is currently with BC Housing and BCH, as well as LIFT and Claham, and whether or not they will be part of the delegation that comes before council, that is unyet decided. But those lines of communication are open.
I can move some amendments.
Before we get, I just want to.
We'll go to Councillor Elliott.
So through the chair, Councillor Almeida, your point is well taken in terms of wording, but I can assure you I listened to the entire council meeting and the amendments that were made. And their original motion, because they weren't getting any dialogue at all from their provider, was to terminate, asking for a termination of the contract. So they made the amendment to soften it. And I've taken out all of the negative wording in terms of our local provider in terms of this motion you see before you tonight. So I've softened it quite a bit as to what they had originally proposed.
Councillor Elliott.
I would move some amendments that might make this more reflective of what I was hoping to see. If staff, I don't know if you have something you can edit on or some way of following along on the screen, that would help, I think. First paragraph, whereas the city is committed to I would remove the word ensuring because I don't want to be implying that we want to be the operators of that and paying for it. Ensuring it has it ties you to being the enforcer, basically. And so, while I know we have the police here as part of our contingent, and that's part of our mandate, I just would prefer to say committed to the safety and well-being of all residents. Paragraph 2, I want to remove the word current so that we're just talking about the operator, because I don't want to be suggesting that the operator that is current would not be the operator in the future. I don't like that idea. I think that if that happens, but it's not something I'm trying to push. Of the supportive housing facility and emergency shelter in Powell River has not had sufficient mandate to alleviate safety concerns in the surrounding neighborhood, including ongoing issues with crime, theft, and vandalism. I think
Point of
that
privilege, Chair. I think staff don't see that you're working on the whereas clauses. They've got the actual motions on the right now. So
yeah, I just started at the top of the entire motion. Clause 1 was a whereas clause.
Through the chair, sorry, the action is after, like the whereas are more background. So the actions are the after therefore be it resolved that. And so I'm just wondering if you're wanting to change the action items as well, or
I do, yes.
Okay. And
so I don't know, how would you like me to go about this? I have changes to the motion, which is quite a lengthy motion. Do you want to do it a clause at a time, or?
Through the chair, the changing the background wouldn't really change any action from council. So we can change it if you wish to go through that. I was thinking of timing for council to focus on changing the actions of council moving forward, but certainly your
we can change them or strike them. If they don't matter, then we don't need them there.
Yeah, can I suggest that you start with therefore be resolved and make amendments moving forward?
I can. I'm just saying if we're passing a motion that includes the whereas clauses, it's part of the motion, even though it has no effect to our action. So we can strike them all together or we can amend them because currently they're not reflective of what I think we need to say. I could move to strike all the whereas clauses. And then we don't have to deal with changing them.
Seems to be a consensus for that.
So we could second that and move that one and move on if you like.
Second the strike.
I'm sorry, but
I'll second striking, moving the whereas clauses, because as the corporate officer says, they are relevant to the motion.
No, sorry, I thought that there was unanimous support for that, but apparently.
I think we have to do a motion.
We have a motion and we have a seconder. All in favor of the motion? Okay.
So starting with therefore clause number 1, the City of Powell River ask for a copy of the existing contract between BC Housing and Lyft Community Services for operation of the existing supportive housing, and the location is fine. and removing through freedom of information requests.
Of information. Question for staff, I guess, on this suggestion. I know it's not on the floor. Is a FOI request required for such an agreement? We can ask for everything under the sun, but if they legally can't provide it, asking is a moot point. So I'm just curious if it's actually required.
Well, I think we could spend the next 6 hours discussing that, and if it's a moot point, they'll ignore it. So that's Councillor Doubt.
I think we're all kind of grown-ups here, and if we want to ask, we could ask, and if we want to do a freedom of information request, we could do that. All it takes is for somebody to make a choice of which one to do. I'd say asking is more politely than a more polite request than demanding through freedom of information. But, council will do what it wants.
Hey, Councillor Elliott.
So clause, yeah, that one's fine. And then clause 2, I don't know what clause 2 even does. It doesn't ask for anything in particular. So I would say to strike clause 2 because there's no action in it. It's just to have anyway, it's a fuzzy one. It doesn't really do anything. Anyway,
So just so everybody's clear, you're talking about that the City of Powell River requests BC Housing ensure blah, 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 blah. Is that the one?
yeah.
Okay.
I love clause 3 the way it is. I think that's great. Thank you for that. And I think the last clause 4 is fine, and clause 5 is fine.
Okay, we have a motion to amend on the floor. Councillor Palm.
We already passed a motion to eliminate all the whereas clauses, but that really eliminates the context of the motion. That's really unfortunate because it doesn't really demonstrate how concerned we really are.
I was willing to fix it.
It is what it is.
Well, my experience is that if you're going to have an ask, that there is a preamble before they ask. So I would fully expect that the whereases will be reflected in any subsequent ask. Not overly concerned about that.
I could live with just the inclusion of the opening paragraph, whereas, so that there are some parameters around what we're talking about here.
Point of information on the procedure. My understanding is that we've already voted on striking the whereas clauses, and we are now debating the proposed amendment of striking that line about freedom of information request and striking the second paragraph. Am I correct in where we're at?
I think we voted on that already.
I think that's where we're at, and subsequently to the voting on this proposed amended motion, there can be subsequent amendments so that if additional information was to be asked, there can be a motion put forward. We have a motion which has been seconded. Any further discussion on the recommended amendments? All in favor? Opposed? Passed. Now, any further amendments on motion that has been passed? Okay,
I have my hand up.
We have a hand up over there.
I may need help with wording because I'm looking for an amendment in the fourth paragraph or now the third paragraph. Because I'm not interested in receiving, yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm not prepared to make an amendment, but I have concerns with the third one. So if anybody else help me out there. It's a challenge for you too.
You're worried about the idea that a contribution means they're not going to pay for it? Is that what you're worried about?
I'm worried about, it looks like the city of Powell River wants to take on that work itself. And I don't know, like, I want to make it clear what we're asking for.
Councillor Dote.
I'd like to move an amendment to the third paragraph, the last one that's on the screen, that the city of Powell River request BC Housing to assist with security, safety, etc. Hope staff got that. Fairly simple change.
Do we have a
Really
seconder?
straightforward.
We have Councillor Amelia has seconded. Staff to put it there. Any further discussion? All in favor of the amendment? Passed unanimously. Okay.
One final amendment. In that third paragraph, to strike the wording after supportive housing and shelter buildings, comma, so that in response to.
All of those or just in response to?
That rest of that line, yeah. So I've moved it, but there's no seconder yet.
So would you read that as you see it?
Yeah, so if passed, the new third paragraph would read that the city of Powell River request BC Housing assist with security, safety, and regular cleanup in the neighborhoods surrounding the supportive housing and shelter buildings.
Okay. Just remind me, who seconded that?
Not seconding yet.
Seconded.
We have Councillor Southcott has seconded and yes, comment.
Have I taken that out, Worship, through the chair, basically eliminating your concern for residents who are living around the present facility? I just can't go along with that.
So, any further? Yes.
I'll just speak to the why I made the amendment. I mean, the focus is on the action. What we're looking for is security, safety, and cleanup surrounding those areas, irregardless of the presumed cause. The focus is on action, and so the action is what's most important. And I think those are the items that the neighborhood community members are seeking most.
Any further discussion? Questions on the motion? Yes, Councillor Almeida.
I don't think this line hurts to have it in there. And there's no extra benefit by taking it out. So I don't need to support this one. I see another couple words that I might want to wordsmith, but not this line.
Okay, we have a motion. Yes, Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have an issue with the words perpetrated by those facilities because it goes back to my original comments with respect to the second whereas clause. It essentially defines what we don't know. We're insinuating negligence, essentially, as I see it. So I would support removing these words, but I can't support the motion with those words in motion.
Any further comments on the amended motion? Okay, just for clarity, that Councillor Isaacson, will you read your amended motion?
So just to clarify, we're voting on the amendment to strike out the remaining lines. So we're striking out, we would be, if we pass this, striking out in response to issues perpetrated by those facilities being located in close proximity to each other and residential neighbors.
We have the motion, it's been seconded, all in favor? Opposed? 4-3, it passes. Okay. I think, yes, Councillor Almeida.
Councillor Doudt had brought up a point at the beginning of this conversation.
Sorry, can we
Excuse me.
limit the conversation to around the council table? Thank you.
Councillor Doudt had brought up the point regarding that same paragraph we were just looking at, which is now paragraph 3, that the word assist might mean they provide $10 to cover security costs, and that doesn't go very far. I wonder if assist with should be changed to ensures security, safety, and regular cleanup in the neighborhoods surrounding the supportive housing and shelter buildings.
Do you have a seconder? Okay, do we have that now captured on the screen? Sorry. Looking intently. Thank you, Jessica.
Easier.
Yes.
I liked the word provide a little bit better. I would be more comfortable with it. Ensures, again, is speaking of enforcement, and I'm not entirely sure how they would go about, like BC Housing doesn't have a mandate for enforcement. They do have money, and they could provide a service that helps with all of that. And so I think provide would be a better word than ensures.
Yes. Councillor Isaacson.
I think assist with, ensures, and provides all have their challenges. You've interpreted ensures, Councillor Elliott, as that they make sure that everyone has security and safety, and they wouldn't be able to do that. I hear the word provides, and it sounds like BC Housing is doing that, and they don't do that. Assist with is also vague, and so I don't think any of those three is perfect, but all of them get to where I think all of them get our intentions. So I'm fine with the amendment, and if it doesn't pass, I'm fine with what was there before.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, passed unanimously. Thank you. And we're now ready to move to, yes, Councillor Doudt.
I'll move that the main motion as amended be carried. Be adopted, sorry. Getting late.
Seconded, Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you.
In preparing for tonight's agenda, I prepared a notice of motion related to this topic that I wanted to read now just as a notice of motion. That council, I've sent it to staff, that council.
Point of order. There's a 12.2 on the agenda that comes before notices of motion.
We didn't adopt the agenda with this notice of motion. It's related to this item itself, so I'm up to the
Corporate
related chair.
officer, are you fine with Councillor Isaacson proceeding?
Through the chair, if the rest of council is fine with this amendment to the agenda, I am more than fine with it. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Doug.
Mr. Mayor, this is pretty straightforward. Item 13 is notices of motion. Anybody can make a notice of motion today if they want to under 13.
Thank you.
Probably easier, in my view, just to follow the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So item 12.2, Supportive Housing Standing Committee, that's going to be deferred until January. Ooh.
That didn't take.
We're at number.
Okay, notice of motion. Yes, Councillor.
Yes, thank you. And so seeing the topics on the agenda tonight, I wanted to include this notice of motion. I will read it aloud. It doesn't get debated tonight. That council writes a letter to the Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs to affirm our strong interest in collaborating with the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs and BC Housing in order to increase the number of affordable housing units in our community, including but not limited to housing for seniors, workers, families, and people with disabilities, village models, and second stage transition housing.
Okay. The notice of motion. That takes us to questions. Mr. Galinsky. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to come forward?
John Brownsell, just live over in Harvey. I hear lots of talk about lack of money for the city. And I see a project going on in the old hospital site with 30 homes, 30 to 35 homes planned. I was wondering if there's been a cost analysis, whether it will cost the city money for that development, or will we make that development?
Point of order, Chair, it's not an item on our agenda.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about money all night, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, we do have protocols, and that was not on the agenda, so.
But we can answer after.
You're welcome to write a letter.
Or ask us outside later.
I'm Cameron Bailey. I just want to find out whether council understands that as it is right now, LIFT can't do the job. They have consistently for months and months and months been looking between 14 and 16 medical professionals and counselors trying to work there, and they don't have them. So how are they supposed to work with these people? They don't have the resources to do it, and they don't seem to be able to attract them. I know 3 people that work there, and they said it's not safe to work there. I know there's paramedics that go in there, and they say it's not safe to go in there.
All right, we're gonna
thing
hold
is
you
a
to your
disaster.
question.
Are you aware of this, or are we just looking for money? Is that all we're looking for?
No, I can assure you that all of Councillor is aware. I'm certainly spent the last 3 years understanding the situation. So.
Okay, so 3 years of understanding, we still haven't got anywhere.
And that's why the motion was brought forward this evening by Councillor Palm. We hope that will result in a change.
Well, I do hope, Mr. Mayor and Councillor Palm, you do keep pursuing this, and hopefully we'll be able to find a solution that will work instead of just kicking a ball around a court.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to ask questions. This relates to agenda item 10.1 and it's
Sorry,
Burton.
could you introduce yourself, please?
Sherry Burton.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions to understand better the parental leave provisions. So my first question is, are counselors covered by the Employment Standards Act? the protection. So you're exempt? So they're exempt. Okay, thank you. With the new council benefits that are coming in, does it include short-term and long-term disability?
Just want to clarify through our acting CAO, when you say coming in, could you please clarify the time frame so that everybody understands?
Through the chair, the question, you're looking for clarity around when this would take place, which would be 2026. And the question around short-term and long-term disability, it excludes short-term and long-term disability.
It excludes it? Thank you. Is council remuneration subject to employment insurance deduction?
Through the chair, I don't believe it is.
Okay, thank you. Under what I don't understand is section 11, which is giving full remuneration. Because most employees, including city employees, is unpaid leave and it's based on employment insurance entitlement. So the council remuneration does not have EI deductions. So I guess that kind of answers that question. But given that the parental leave, the way it's being drafted, is that only 2 councillors can be on parental leave at the same time. So I worry about the legalities because under employment standards, but also under human rights, you're allowed to have time off for birth or adoption. So what would the legality to the city be if there's a 3rd councillor, be it through birth or adoption, wants parental leave at the same time there's 2 others?
Could you answer that?
The corporate officer.
Through the chair, Deputy Corporate Officer Walls, would you have an answer to that question?
Through the chair, not off the top of my head. I'd have to look into it further. Thank you.
Okay, because I think that's a real possibility that could put the city in legal jeopardy because you wouldn't be able to say, I'm pretty sure a court of law would say, no, you can't tell them they can't take parental leave. So that's a situation that could arise.
So noted.
And also, I get a little concerned about this being age discrimination because from a taxpayer's perspective, I'm quite willing to pay full remuneration for a counselor who an unexpected illness, stress leave or whatever. I can accept that because it's unexpected, and I wouldn't want anyone who is suffering a life-altering event to be without being paid. I can wrap my head around that as a taxpayer. But is it in a way age discrimination when people who are childbearing or adoption age would essentially leap ahead of anybody then who comes up with an unexpected life event?
Can we refer that to our corporate officer? Or, sorry, Councillor Almeida has an answer.
Well, at our meeting 2 weeks ago, Councillor Elliott made the reference that it was very likely that, and while most of this is scheduled to take place for the next term, she made the reference that it's very likely that most councillors here won't be in a position to expect any children coming up, but she neglected her own situation where she ended up adopting unexpectedly her own family members. So while yes, in the case of bearing a child, you have 9 months to prepare, it's less unexpected. Sometimes situations happen and a family member might have a situation that requires you to take in a nephew or a niece, and that isn't as expected. So I don't, while yes, there are some merits to the age thing, I don't think it discriminates because we've tried to cover it as a family care option. And adoption was part of that. And we could amend it to include foster care if that softens a little bit. But I think the heart of it is there.
Thank you. And also going back to the legality issue, the parental leave provision was amended to 26 weeks. Again, I think you may be faced with, but under human rights and other provisions, they're entitled to longer. So I'm not sure, has anyone checked on the legality of whether you at the city can shorten that?
I guarantee you we haven't because of the amendment just went through, but I'll defer to our corporate officer, our acting CAO.
Through the chair, I would have to double check on these details in particular. What I recall having come across in the past is that elected officials aren't covered under employment standards. So this is the remuneration. It's not a salary. It's more of a stipend, and it's not. They're not officially employees. It's kind of a funny arrangement. So I don't believe the employment standards that have maternity leave provisions in place apply to elected officials. Again, before getting quoted on that, I will have to double check, but I do recall there being some gray area there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wald. So with regards to the 26 weeks duration, council is also aware that for a parent who has given birth, there's also the 17 weeks for maternity leave. So that's 43 weeks of leave. So I just want to make everyone not to be focused on just the number 26. For a parent that's given birth, it's 43. And I'm hoping that's the last of my questions. Oh, the one final question that's still not answered for me is when does this parental leave provision starts? Because in the bylaw, it sets out when all the other changes are starting, but not parental leave. Is that going to start next year?
Defer to our acting CAO.
Through the chair, Ms. Walls, I recall that to be 2026, but I'll defer to you.
Through the chair, when this was discussed, council chose not to put timing on it, given the unlikely event of anybody on the current council needing parental leave. So a timing provision wasn't put into place. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm hoping that's it. I'm just double checking. Give me a second. Yeah, I think I've lost it, that last question. I'll put it in an email when I remember it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Council. Ted Vizzuti. One simple one, or two questions, but the first one's simple. In regards to your remuneration, where you've talked about getting your receipts for providing wine or whatever you want for family members, or if you're staying with a family member, how do you get a receipt from a family member? You get it from a hotel or you get it from a mortgage place, but how does a family provide a receipt for getting a gift?
Councilor Armida.
The receipt's not from the family member. The receipt is the proof that you have blessed them with a gift. So it could be a save-on gift card, could be a thank you dinner at a restaurant. That's where the receipt is coming from. It's an appreciation for thanks for hosting me and saving our city $1,000.
Okay, good. Thanks on that part. In regards to the motion that was put forward by Councillor Palm in regards to Seashelt and the housing issues, and then it was torn apart. My question is, do we have a member of council that was on the regional board who was in a conflict of interest, and was that the reason why that person left the regional board? And if it was true, is that person in conflict of interest if voting on issues regarding LIFT and our housing on our council still in effect?
Councillor Elliott.
All conflicts of interest are declared publicly in a public meeting if they exist. So I don't think that there's any connection between leaving the board and conflict of interest. If there was one, it would have been declared publicly and you would know.
Nope, just let you know that that's the talk of the town, that there was a conflict. So that's why I thought I'd ask the question. Thanks very much.
Okay. Do we have anybody online? Calls. All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Mm-mm.
Oh, didn't see.
Just a sec. Whoa. Councillor Isaacson.
I didn't realize that we had more speakers, so I had made a motion to adjourn. It was not seconded. We have another question asked.
Right.
Is it okay, Your Worship?
It is.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. My name is Roger Whitaker, father of a young family, citizen of Powell River. And just a couple of questions that were brought up tonight. And what I'm wondering is, first of all, when these benefits kick in 2027, it basically adds another, I did the math, 1 second, please. $30,943 to the benefits of being a councillor, which is basically the taxes of another 6 houses. So a rough calculation of each councillor, not the mayor, is that each of you is paid around 30-some thousand, which is the taxes of 6 houses. And how can this council, which said just on Tuesday that they were not trying to burden future councils with costs by kicking the can down the road on a bunch of other things, how can you burden a future council with a $30,000 extra when no other cities this size have this benefit? And if I might be so bold as to make a suggestion, if I be allowed, just on this.
Let's first of all see if there's an answer to your question. Councillor Almeida.
For one point, the
microphone, please.
I can't get any closer to it. But the family care option out of the 30,900 that you referenced, the 13,000 is family care. That family care could be zero in any particular year if no one actually uses it. And so that would, while yes, it would be part of the budget, it would then end up, CFO can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it would then end up in reserves to be used for future projects down the road. So it is not going in the pockets of, actually the family care is not going in the pockets of any counselor. It's designed to allow them to continue to serve as counselors.
No, I understand that 100%, actually. I realize this is a cost that would be paid out to some third-party organization managing this sort of thing.
You have another question?
I do.
Just a second, Councillor Southcott.
There's one more element along the same lines as what Councillor Almeida offered, and that is that there's an opt-out option. So for people on council who already have benefits, they can opt out of this, thereby saving money for the taxpayers.
Okay, well, and just familiar, there's 2 things I'd like to add to that. Familiar with these sorts of programs. People.
I'm going to have to ask you to ask a question rather than inform us.
Okay, sure. Are you aware that people over 65 are termed out on these benefits? Okay, and the second question is, as a group, you could, if I may be so bold to suggest, you could approach UBCM
and ask for the whole entire province to go back to the current administration in Ottawa and ask for your tax benefit back for sitting on city council, which was a huge benefit that the current administration took away. The question would be, would you have the panache to do that?
Councillor Doubt, I believe you were.
Councillor answered the question. I don't have to answer it.
Thank you.
Nobody has to answer a question. I'm asking the chair if this council would have the panache to put forward to UBCM to go and ask the current administration for their tax credit back.
Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, the tax credit was a good idea because now we have to file all of our expenses in order to get any benefit whatsoever, and it's a lot of work for everybody, including CRA. I do believe it did go through resolution to UBCM. I could back when it was being contemplated removed, I think there was a resolution that went through UBCM and FCM, if I recall, and I don't think it had any impact on the administration of the day. But I think because it's to the provincial government that you would, or it's a federal government thing, it would be FCM that you would want to go through.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that it's probably been done, but we could look again and we could check that out.
That'd be great. I think it should be a top priority for a council to be doing that. And the second question has to do with the Procedures Act, which I understand passed tonight.
Point of information, it didn't pass tonight. We only gave it 2 readings.
Oh, how wonderful. So my question is, I see that it says there that it's going to be contingent on parts of the community charter. Is this council aware of how many times the word public appears in the community charter? You know, it's a word night.
I think that's a complicated question. I'm not seeing any immediate answers.
It appears 32 times.
Thank you.
And it refers always to the public being invited or being allowed to see inside what the council is doing every single time. This procedure, and I'm not 100% sure of this yet, but this procedure bylaw may be in conflict with law. If council's aware of that,
I'm afraid you're educating us rather than asking.
Are you aware that this might be in conflict of the community charter because it deals with limiting persons of the public having their business with council?
Councillor Doubt.
Council has had legal counsel review the procedure bylaw draft.
And with all due respect to that question, are you aware there's usually 2 or more lawyers in a courtroom arguing both sides of a question?
You want to get into talking about everything about the court system? I'm telling
No, sir, I do not.
I'm telling you, we had a legal review, and that's a standard.
I see. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, Diana Collicutt. So my question is about the rationale for the 100% remuneration. You know, most people, union and non-union folks, if they take maternity and paternity benefits, they get a partial wage for being off. So what's the rationale for 100% wage stipend while that person is on parental leave?
Councillor Isaacson.
I can't speak for all of council on the rationale, but one of the reasons being that it is a flexible bylaw in that it allows for continued counselor involvement during the span of the leave. I think it's really difficult before you have parental leave to know whether or not you're going to want to go back to work or whether you're going to have more medical challenges than expected. And so this provides clarity in advance. And we are in a unique position to be responsible for setting our own remuneration. And when I look forward to future councils and attracting the widest breadth of people to run for council, that was my personal rationale in including it at 100% because of that flexibility piece and because of the certainty.
Councillor Elliott, you have
A perspective, yes. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Collicutt. So council members have no EI, no anything of that kind. It's the hope of most folks when you're in the, or at least me sitting in this chair, is to contribute as much as you can, and I do. And so the thinking in the bylaw is written in such that those folks on maternity leave can continue in their duties as much as they can, but are not they would be excused if they didn't show up for a meeting without the provisions of the charter saying, well, you can't miss this many meetings in a row or what have you because you're on a leave. Similarly, other leaves that happen on council, anytime you've been granted a leave, you are as a council member entitled to show up at any meeting you want to. So if you're on a medical leave but you're feeling pretty good that day, you can show up and participate, but because you're on leave, you're not required to. And so it's a bit of a different type of leave because of the nature of elected peoples, is that even if you're on leave, you're still the one that sits in that elected position and at any time can step forward and represent your constituents in any of the proceedings.
Thank you. Just a question then, Mayor, are you receiving your stipend while you're on medical leave?
Yes. Although I'm not on medical leave, in terms of the arrangement with council, it was as a result of my surgery, if I could participate by video or in person, I would. So.
I just think, I have to say this, I just think for folks that are pushing for 100% and all of these benefits, that you've lost touch with the fact that that's taxpayer dollars. It's not employment insurance, it's coming from the taxpayer. And it's quite excessive, this package that you're looking at voting in for yourself.
Just going to check. Greg, is there anybody from the Breakfast Club that's got a question? All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Seconded. All in favor?
Yeah, I guess 10